Hi, this is Ken Kring, and thank you for taking time to learn about how business strategy mapping, a form of integrated thinking, should be taught in high schools. After you have had a chance to review this video, please take some time to share your thoughts in the comments section below. And please share this with your friends, coworkers, and any high school educators you may know. Thanks. Here's something to think about. The moment a high school student gets a job, they're in business. We need to teach business much more robustly in high schools. High school students are going to be spending the rest of their lives in business, surrounded by it, having to navigate it. We need to get on with it already. We teach people how to split atoms. We teach people how to transplant hearts. And yet we can't explicitly teach people how marketing, finance, and operations all fit together? That just feels like intellectual malpractice. We teach in silos, we write in silos, we work in silos, and then we're mystified that we have a problem with silos? Really? Come on. You can go to business conferences for decades and see different people ask the exact same questions over and over and over again, which leaves you to wonder, what wasn't done right the first time that it requires the questions to be asked and answered over and over and over again? Without anchoring business initiatives into a larger framework of integrated thinking, many business initiatives have the same staying power as the output from a confetti cannon. Whee! It's all fun for a while, but after 2 weeks, you're vacuuming up and left wondering, what was all of that about? Many companies don't need to look much farther than their cultural initiative of the month for an example of such ineffective and temporary change. The end result of disintegrated thinking is a lack of alignment in the efforts of everyone, confusion, inefficiency, low productivity, low employee engagement, a lack of agility, the deceleration of almost everything, etc., etc., etc. The power of integrated thinking, on the other hand, is easy to illustrate through a quick exercise. Take 3 groups of people and have them each assemble the exact same jigsaw puzzle. The first group with the puzzle pieces face down, the second group with the puzzle pieces face up, and the third group with the puzzle pieces face up and a copy of the puzzle box lid. Which group is going to be happiest, fastest, the most productive? It's going to be the group with the puzzle box lid. Life, business, data, everything are all like a Seurat oil painting. They are nothing but a series of dots, but if you know how all the dots fit together and you take a step back, you can clearly see the larger picture. The river, the park, the woman with the parasol, and for some reason that little monkey she brings with her everywhere. So how do we fix all of this? The answer is business strategy mapping. Or to think about it another way, integrated thinking. Leveraging the power of knowing how it all fits together. The framework you are going to see shows how marketing, finance, and operations all fit together. It was initially designed years ago. It started with a conversation with the CEO. As we were leaving a meeting, he asked me, "How do you think we should best grow the company?" I went on to let him know what it is I thought we should do. He paused, thought about it for a bit, and then he said, "What I really need to know is how do I best invest in the company?" When I went to give him an answer, I had to pause and say, "That is a very different question." It quickly dawned on me while trying to answer the question, how do I best invest in the company, that unless I knew how the decisions in Area A affected the decisions in Area B and how it affected the whole given the flow of the company, I wasn't going to be able to figure it out. To understand how all the decisions fit together, I then needed to understand how the business fit together. And this business, like so many others, was made up of functional silos: marketing, finance, operations, etc. And these functional silos all serve different business units. And functional silos are great for the efficiencies they bring. You can't get those efficiencies any other way. But business cuts across silos to get actual real work done. So to understand how all the decisions fit together, you need to understand how all the parts of the company fit together. The siloed view of the company didn't really address how do we best invest in the company. It didn't show how all of the decisions fit together, so it was necessary to start from scratch and understand how the business and the business decisions flowed from potential to profitability and the points in between. It quickly became apparent that it wasn't just profitability for the company, but it was profitability for the customer too. Profitability for the customer is the difference between what it is they're willing to pay for an item and what it is they actually pay for the item. For people that value things exactly the same amount as they pay for them, then they're indifferent as to whether they buy those items in the first place or not. A quick exercise we do at conferences to illustrate the concept of profitability for the customer is to ask someone, what's the most you're willing to pay for a gallon of milk before it is they won't buy milk anymore? And the conditions are that everybody sells it only in gallons and everybody sells gallons at the same price. It turns out on average it works out to be $7, which means if people value a gallon of milk at $7 and they pay $3 for a gallon of milk, then that difference, $4, is the average profitability for the customer. There's another way to look at business, products, projects, business opportunities. They all move from potential to profitability and the points in between. That is profitability for the company and profitability for the customer. But there needs to be a balancing point. Without a balancing point, you get companies calling in motivational speakers to go, rah, 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 the customer is our number one priority. And later on that same week, the CEO will cheer, rah, 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 shareholders are our number one priority. Profitability for the customer usually resonates with the marketing department. Profitability for the shareholders usually resonates with the finance department. And if you don't articulate the balancing point, you get turf wars, which reduces the overall value generated for everybody. You also get a lack of alignment, a lack of employee engagement, discontent, low productivity, deceleration of almost everything, confusion, inefficiency, and on and on. The benefit of the balancing point is that it gives a clear sense of a shared direction, one that everyone can follow, and a lot more easily than other methods. There's a difference between a mission statement and a good mission statement. For example, let's say that you have a company and that it's in San Diego, and you say our mission, our vision is to head east. Some employees will stop in Texas and say, this is where you meant right. Other employees will stop in Maine and say, this is where you meant right. When if you gave it 90 more minutes of thought, not much more, 90 more minutes of thought, you could have said instead, our mission, our vision is to be at the corner of State and Madison in Chicago at 12:15 on a Thursday. The employees in Texas will know how to correct. Your employees in Maine will know how to correct. And your overseas suppliers to whom East meant something totally different, they'll know how to correct. Why? Because you took the time to articulate a unifying star on the horizon and not just saying East. This is the power of knowing how it all fits together. It is easier to visually and intuitively understand how it all fits together by using the words with what we're given, what do we do about it, what are the results, and how successful are we? There are others that may feel uneasy about this conversational approach, and for those people you can say, given the situational analysis, what is the action plan? How are we going to measure the results? How are we going to evaluate the results? However you say it, the importance is in sharing a common purpose or picture that will boost the alignment of efforts throughout the entire company, making everyone happier, faster, and more productive. In a bit, you're going to see some slides with boxes and lines on them. The important thing to understand about the boxes and the lines is it's just a visual representation of a conversation about how business flows from potential to profitability and the points in between. This conversation just goes into slightly greater detail regarding what we mean when we say, with what we are given, what do we do about it, what are the results, and how successful were we? Regarding the with what it is we are given portion of the business strategy map, we first want to find the subject that we want to drive from potential to profitability and the points in between. In this example, let's say this is the company we work for and the company makes widgets, and the reason we're filling out this business strategy map is to understand how all of the pieces fit together. To understand it so we can maximize the alignment of efforts throughout the company. After defining the subject and the reason for filling out the business strategy map, the next step is what does the playing field look like? The playing field being the customers, the company, the competition itself, and any other environmental factors. The next step is in understanding what the objectives are of the business and the customers. We need to understand the objectives of both because they both need to win. If one doesn't win, then neither wins because one will walk away from the other. After that, we need to understand what the customers perceive as valuable given the objectives and given the playing field and given the subject above. And finally, what's the overall potential of everything given what it is that we've covered? It's fun to think of the potential as profit pools. Profit tends to collect in pools, so if you understand the size, shape, and the location of your profit pool or profit pools, you will better know how to go ahead and drill into those pools to extract the maximum amount of value possible. Now we are on to what do we do about it. What do we do about it has three major pieces. What do we offer given everything above? How do we hook the customers all the way through the value delivered given everything above? And what are the key learnings given everything up to this point? When we talk about what it is we offer, it turns out to be 3 out of the 4 or 5 marketing P's, depending upon who it is you read. It's the product, the pricing, and the placement. The placement is also known as distribution of the product. When we talk about hooking customers, it's all about how do we hook them from head to heart. What I mean by that is how do we get from the customer's head for them to learn about our product? How do we get to their smile for them to like it? How do we get to their hands or feet for them to do something about it? And then finally, how do we get to their heart for loyalty so they continue to repurchase and recommend to others? From head to heart, how do we best win over the whole customer? Here's where it picks up a little bit of speed. With what we are given and then what we do about it, we then move on to what are the results. The results being what are the revenues of all of our activities, what are the costs of all of our activities, and then finally, what is the overall profitability of it all? With what we are given and then what we do about it, and given the results, we then move on to how successful were we. How successful were we is made up of 3 segments. What are the perceived future trends? What is the total value delivered to the shareholders? And finally, and this is probably the most important point, what is the balancing point between the total value delivered to the company and the total value delivered to the customers? Again, the reason this balancing point is so important is because it allows everyone to clearly align their efforts, aligning their efforts on shooting for a shared star off on the horizon. Without the balancing point, people are misaligned, frustrated, inefficient. With the balancing point, everyone turns out to be happier, faster, and more productive. And that's what we really want, isn't it? Again, the next slide you're going to see is just a conversation to make it easier to visually and intuitively see how businesses flow. Businesses flow from potential to profitability and the points in between. The conversation is now going to be made up of boxes and lines. It's the same conversation we just talked about earlier, it's just now visually represented. This makes it easier to quickly fill in blanks to see how your business works, fill in blanks to build business cases for product development initiatives and investment initiatives, and also to see how all of the dots fit together so you can see what your puzzle box lid looks like. Here's the visual representation of that same story we just talked about, all the way from the subject to the balancing point of the total value delivered to the company or the shareholders and the total value delivered to the customer. Again, by laying this out in a visual way, it's much easier for people to figure out what it is their version of the puzzle box lid looks like. Again, this framework can be broken up into 4 sections. The first part being with what you're given, the second part being what do you do about it, the third part being what are the results, and the fourth part being how are you going to evaluate the results. I showed this framework to a president of a company years ago and I said, this is great, it really helps me understand strategy. He looked at it and said, I really don't see strategy on here, and I thought to myself, oh golly, really? And so what I did is added these shaded boxes. What you can see in the shaded boxes are the objectives, which can act as strategy anchors, the start of your operational strategy, given what it is you offer, the end result of your marketing strategy, given the value delivered to the customer, the end result of the finance strategy, given the value delivered to the company, and even the customer strategy on whether they trial, purchase, or repurchase. For marketing and finance, I call that the result of your strategies because different companies will start their marketing and finance strategies in different places, sometimes going all the way back to the playing field in the subject. This is essentially your puzzle box lid. If you fill one of these frameworks out and share it with others, everybody can see, given the flow of business, where they fit, how they link up, how they affect the whole, making everyone happier, faster, and more productive. Years ago, I worked with a woman named Betty, and I was going into a meeting, and we were waiting outside. She asked me, Ken, what are you going to be presenting at the meeting? I said it was a potential expansion opportunity. Betty then went on to go ahead and tell me the difference between our department versus their department. It turned into an entirely us versus them conversation. We then went into the meeting and I laid out essentially this same flow. And during the meeting, Betty stood up and said, "We need to do this, we need to do that." That caught my ear as funny that before the meeting it was us versus them, and after the meeting it was we need to do this, we need to do that. I pulled Betty aside after the meeting and said, "What changed that it turned from us versus them into we?" And she essentially said that once I could see the flow of business, where I fit, how I link up, and how I affect the whole, it dawned on me that when you get a hole in your section of the boat, my ankles get wet. We need to work together. This again is the power of integrated thinking. Again, whether we are the CEO, the janitor, or anyone in between, our job directly or indirectly is all about driving profitable behaviors. The profitable behaviors of both the customers and the employees. But when looking to drive profitable behaviors, it's important to first understand what it is that drives behaviors. It is perceptions that drive behaviors. This 6-step fill-in-the-blank exercise will help give you a laser-like focus on how to drive profitable behaviors. It turns out that a customer's current perceptions drive their current behaviors, and that the perceptions you desire for the customer will drive the behaviors you desire for the customer. And if you explicitly identify the primary actionable barrier that stands in the way of getting the whole thing to flip, you can then explicitly design targeted, focused solutions to overcome the primary actionable barrier, to then shift perceptions to drive behaviors. That makes this an incredibly powerful methodology or framework to use. It also works for internal customers too. If you're trying to influence the behavior of a senior executive, the current perceptions of the senior executive influence and drive the current behaviors of the senior executives. The perceptions you desire for the senior executive will drive the behaviors you desire for the senior executive. And if you understand what the primary actionable barrier is that stands in the way of getting those perceptions to shift or flip for the senior executive, you can then internally design targeted focused solutions to overcome the specific primary actionable barrier to drive the behavior of the senior executive. Many times in business, I have had to use this framework to drive the behavior of the senior executives so I could then get approval and funding to drive the behaviors of the customers. This Kring strategy mapping framework is incredibly useful to use. It can be used for just about everything, as a discovery tool to uncover and describe the current state of a business or an opportunity, as a diagnostic tool to highlight areas of opportunity and risk, as a prescriptive tool to generate and articulate recommended courses of action, as a treatment tool acting as a guide when executing courses of action and be able to go ahead and communicate it to others, as a measurement tool to monitor progress, and finally as an evaluation tool to gauge the relative level of success of efforts and give clues as to when to re-examine our efforts for the next quarter. This is all meant to be used as a practical tool to get things done. Again, alignment, efficiency, focus to make people happier, faster, more productive. So it's important to go ahead and think about how it is you can quickly implement this. To quickly implement it, you can start with the issue you want to understand better. Use existing information, goals, initiatives, and measures are a great place to start. Concentrate on areas of greatest concern first. Initially be brief. The process should go relatively quickly. Many times you can just use the things that are in your head, not even on your computer or in your desk drawers. The important thing is to finish filling out a first draft relatively quickly. It reminds me of an old business writing teacher that once told me, "Write once, revise many." This will be the quickest way for you to effectively and quickly and practically use business strategy mapping framework. There is even a worksheet you can use, a worksheet that allows you to quickly fill in blanks to build your business strategy map for the opportunity you want to drive from potential to profitability and the points in between. You can think of filling out the worksheet as playing 20 questions 1.5 times. You can receive a free copy of the worksheet by simply sending a request to the email address above. Feel free to also send along any questions or comments you have. As a business geek, I love this stuff. And we all need to more quickly get to a place where we understand integrated thinking much better. Again, the upside being we'll all be better aligned, thus making us all happier, faster, and more productive. To explain in a different way why it's so important to teach high school students business strategy mapping or integrated thinking, here's another way to think about it. Every moment of the day, high school students are surrounded by business models, hundreds of business models. Wouldn't it be better if they could proactively work their way through life because they understand how the business models work, instead of only being able to react because they don't really know what's going on around them? We really just need to get on with it already. Thank you for taking the time to view this video on how business strategy mapping or integrated thinking should be taught in high schools. Again, taught in high schools to better ensure that the next generation knows how it all fits together, so that they know what the puzzle box lids around them look like. Please share this with your friends, with your coworkers, with any educators you know, and please let me know if you have any questions. The sooner we help the next generation understand how it all fits together, the happier and faster and more productive we'll all be. Thanks. And finally, a little bit about me. My name is Ken Kring. Over the years, I've worked on both the client and agency sides of business, including Walmart, Walgreens, Sears and Kmart, Discover Financial Services, Foot Cone and Belding, and others. The work I do is always designed to make everyone happier, faster, and more productive. Happier, faster, and more productive by making it visually clear as to how to best drive the profitable behaviors of both the customers and employees. I speak at a range of conferences and workshops. Some of the topics include driving profitable growth through integrated thinking, optimizing product innovation and management, total customer experience design, and one of my favorites is big data great? Now what do we do with it? We're all drowning in data, but so many companies aren't sure what to do with all of it, mostly because it's difficult to know how it all fits together. The framework in this video helps you figure it out how it all fits together and then what to do about it. This is going to be especially important for high school students going forward. Other topics include employee analytics and insights, linking people and business metrics, financial optimization, getting the most out of all of your resources, mergers and acquisitions, optimizing your portfolio, and customized company and issue-specific topics. Again, high school students will be able to go so much farther, so much faster when they all see how all of the pieces fit together. If you have any questions or comments, or would like a free copy of the worksheet that was earlier in this video, feel free to reach out to me at the email address listed at the top of this page. And once again, thank you for taking the time to view this video, and please share it with others.